Trump forced Canada to drop its digital tax, and he got his win. But that moment triggered something bigger. While Trump celebrated, Carney shifted strategy away from US dependence toward LNG exports and new global markets. At the same time, Canadians responded in their own way, with record levels of national pride and a quiet boycott of America. This isn't just a trade story anymore. It's a turning point. Trump got what he wanted. Just days after cutting off trade talks, he watched Canada fold. The digital tax worth over $7 billion Canadian dollars was gone. Cancelled just hours before it took effect. No tariffs, no Section 301 probe, just a clean public retreat. It looked like a total win, but not to everyone. Economist Julian Karagassian, a former special advisor to Canada's finance ministry, saw it differently. He called it a smart tactical play, not surrender, but timing. By holding the tax until the last possible moment, then pulling it, Carney created the appearance of concession without giving up broader leverage. The loss was real. Canada gave up billions in projected revenue at a time of historic budget pressures, from defence spending to healthcare transfers. But the move also preserved space to negotiate, avoid escalation, and keep Canada at the table. Trump claimed victory. But Carney, Karagassian argued, had already pivoted to something much bigger. I think we need to reduce our trade dependence on the United States. We are a natural resource superpower. While Trump grabbed headlines, Carney played a longer game. Behind the scenes, his government launched a subtle economic reset, one that looks far beyond the US market. Karagassian warns that Canada's current economic model, overly reliant on American demand, is under attack. The response? Diversify exports, pivot toward Asia, Europe, and the global South, and build an economy for the 21st century with infrastructure to match. At the heart of this strategy is something tangible: liquefied natural gas, LNG. Canada's first liquefied natural gas, or LNG, export facility is finally up and running. Canada could go from exporting 0 tons of LNG to more than 50 million tons per year. On July 1st, Canada's first LNG export facility at Kitimat shipped its inaugural load to Asia, a historic milestone. It's part of a broader shift. 7 LNG projects are now in various stages of development, many backed by Indigenous communities. If completed, they could catapult Canada from 0 to over 50 million tons of LNG exports annually. The Susquehanna LNG project, led by the Nisga'a Nation in British Columbia, is especially ambitious with an estimated $20 billion USD price tag. The goal? Deliver gas to global markets by 2029. Canada is late to the LNG game, trailing far behind the US, which now leads the world in exports. But Carney may be betting that LNG, not tech taxes, is Canada's true bargaining chip. Politico and the Financial Times both point to LNG as a possible strategic lever in ongoing trade talks. And this time it's tied to real-world flows, not just tax codes. I don't remember anyone prescribing that all we needed was a loudmouth bully threatening our economy and sovereignty to reignite pride in flag and country. I have cancelled my usual visit to the US. Trump's tactics may have pushed more than just politicians. They've pushed the people. According to a new Ipsos poll released June 30th, nearly half of Canadians say they feel more proud to be Canadian, a 33% jump over last year. Meanwhile, 77% say they view the US more negatively due to Trump's recent threats. And nearly 3/4 say they'll avoid travelling to the US altogether. Even more striking, 60% of Canadians say they trust Carney to manage Trump. A rare show of confidence in the middle of a trade dispute. On Canada Day, that sentiment echoed across the country. Carney didn't gloat or fight. He simply said, "We want the right deal, but nothing is guaranteed." So yes, Trump got his win. The tax is gone. The talks are back on. But Canada is shifting in policy, in strategy, and in spirit. LNG may become the new language of leverage, and Carney, quiet but deliberate, is positioning his country for something more than just a deal. Trump may have won the first round, but the real match has just begun. You also have to ask, is Canada still buying those cars? We buy about 1.8 million vehicles a year. They might lose a market, or their market of 1.8 million vehicles drops because maybe we put tariffs on US-made vehicles. When President Trump raised tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum to 50% in mid-2025, the rhetoric was familiar. Protect American jobs, punish unfair trade. But somewhere between the press releases and the political bravado, the impact on everyday people got lost. Because while factories adjust and politicians posture, consumers are the ones paying the price, literally. On average, US families are now spending an estimated $300 more per year on cars and appliances, according to a June report by the Center for Automotive Research. And across the border, Canadians are responding, not with anger, but with silence. They're walking away from US-made vehicles. Dealerships in Ontario and Quebec have reported up to a 30% drop in sales of US brands since April. Some are shifting floor space toward Korean and European models, while others say customers are holding off until the tariffs go away, if they ever do. And that tariff doubled to 50%. The issue is that 91% of Canadian steel exports go to the United States. Nearly 1,000 steel jobs have been lost so far. Canada's steel sector is the first casualty, with 91% of its exports heading to the US. The 50% tariff has caused nearly 1,000 job losses so far, according to the Canadian Steel Producers Association. More could come in the weeks ahead, with towns like Sault Ste. Marie bracing for what one mayor called post-industrial collapse. Canada hasn't retaliated yet. Prime Minister Mark Carney has set a July 21st deadline. If no trade deal is reached, counter tariffs on US exports could begin. In the meantime, Canada is trying to shield itself. Federal procurement contracts now require domestic steel. Quotas have been imposed on cheap imports from non-free trade agreement countries, but none of it is enough to restore stability. Catherine Cobden, president of the Canadian Steel Producers Association, has warned that blast furnaces can't just pause production. Once they shut down, many never restart. Thousands more jobs are now on the line with little time left before irreversible damage. And we've got this tariff on finished auto goods. And if the vehicles made in Canada cost 25% more to American consumers, in April alone, Canadian vehicle exports to the US dropped by nearly 23%, driven by Trump's 25% auto tariff. Buyers in both countries are hesitant. US prices are up. Canadian assembly plants are down, and dealers from Toronto to Buffalo are left guessing which model will be cancelled next. For decades, Canadians bought over 1.8 million US vehicles annually. That number is shrinking fast. Carney's government has even floated the idea of retaliatory tariffs or lifting import duties on Chinese cars, a signal that US brands may no longer be the default choice. In the US, meanwhile, uncertainty has halted forward planning. Automakers are slashing production forecasts. Customers are delaying purchases, and despite short-term sales boosts at Ford and Hyundai in May, experts warn demand is being pulled forward, not grown. Some analysts worry that these trade disruptions are breaking trust, not just between nations, but between consumers and the companies they rely on. If a customer can't be sure whether their vehicle will be serviced, warrantied, or supported next year, they may not buy at all. If you build here, you have no tariffs whatsoever. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think our country is going to be flooded with jobs. Jobs for everybody. Could be done, but it would take years, if not decades, to get the supply chain back on track. Trump promised a rebirth of American manufacturing. But in practice, he's delivered something else. Chaos across North America's most integrated supply chain. His tariff threats may look strong on paper, but on the ground, they've created confusion, delays, and rising costs. All of it shouldered by workers and consumers. This isn't just a trade war, it's a confidence crisis. And for millions of families deciding whether to buy a new car, the message from Washington is anything but reassuring. Sometimes the most expensive thing in politics is unpredictability. And right now, it's showing up in driveways, one payment at a time. Canada, they were foolish to do it. So I said, we're going to stop all negotiations with Canada right now until they straighten out their act. US President Donald Trump repeating his rhetoric over Canada becoming the 51st state, days after saying trade negotiations between the two countries have ended. It started with a sentence. President Trump declared, "We're done talking." In one abrupt move, he ended trade negotiations with Canada, America's closest neighbour and longest-standing ally. It wasn't just about taxes. It wasn't just about trade. What followed was something far more provocative. Trump said, "We'll be fine with Canada. I love Canada. Frankly, Canada should be the 51st state." The shock wasn't just in the statement. It was in the timing, the tone, and the threat that came right after. New tariffs, 7 days, and zero room for compromise. This policy actually was introduced by the previous administration in Canada. It was bad policy then, and it's bad policy now. Trudeau, and now Carney, has no income. So, he's trying to find any way he can to make income. At the centre of the explosion was a tax, a 3% levy on digital services introduced by Canada and set to take effect on July 1st. It targets major US tech giants like Google, Amazon, and Meta. Investor Kevin O'Leary described the tax as a desperate measure, pointing to Trudeau-era energy restrictions as the root of Canada's revenue crisis. Though long in the making, planned since 2019 and passed into law in 2024, it was the moment of collection that triggered Trump's fury. According to estimates from Canada's Parliamentary Budget Office, this tax could bring in nearly $7 billion over 5 years. Trump didn't just oppose it. He viewed it as an attack, one that demanded immediate retaliation. And so he slammed the brakes on all trade talks, warning that tariffs would be imposed on key Canadian exports within the week. But this wasn't just about big tech. It was about power, politics, and old grudges. It's pure Trump. It's the way he negotiates. He throws live munitions at something, and he hopes that something in his favour will come of it. Trump has never hidden his disdain for Canada's supply management system, a framework that protects dairy, poultry, and egg farmers through quotas and price controls. It was a sticking point in the original NAFTA talks, and despite being enshrined in the USMCA agreement Trump himself signed, he's now calling it unfair. Then came the metals. Steel and aluminum are back in the firing line. Industries that have seen tariffs rise and fall multiple times since 2018. To Trump, Canada is a dependent partner who enjoys US market access without paying its dues. That's the justification he gives, not just for trade penalties, but for something even more dramatic. By suggesting Canada become the 51st state, Trump is using the language of absorption to assert dominance. Critics call it rhetorical theatre, but for Trump, it's a power play, and it's a move designed to force a response. No one takes seriously here in the United States his talk about the 51st state, but he does seem to be using it as a form of leverage, or hoping that it could be used as leverage to get what he perceives to be a better deal. While Trump turns up the volume, Canada turns inward. Prime Minister Mark Carney has avoided direct confrontation. Behind closed doors, senior officials continue quiet outreach to Washington, trying to salvage some path forward. The Canadian government shows no signs of abandoning its agricultural protections, a red line in every negotiation. But the digital services tax, that's another matter. Sources within the Canadian Finance Ministry, speaking on background to local media, have acknowledged the DST may be flexible if it leads to a broader deal. Meanwhile, Trump is under pressure. His 90 deals in 90 days campaign is running out of time before the July 9th deadline. His signature spending bill, nicknamed the Big Beautiful Bill, faces resistance in the Senate. And even Elon Musk, once a close ally, is publicly criticizing his economic priorities. Trump needs a win. Canada, for now, refuses to hand him one. So, what's next? If Canada caves on the DST, a reset in negotiations is possible. If they hold the line, Trump could follow through on tariffs that would hit Canadian steel, aluminum, and dairy, damaging sectors already under pressure from inflation and slowing global demand. But the deeper risk is strategic. Trump isn't just testing Canada. He's testing the boundaries of trade diplomacy itself, turning up pressure, making personal demands, blurring the line between economic and political integration. In this high-stakes standoff, there are no easy outcomes. But one truth is clear. Trump is not negotiating for just a trade deal. He's negotiating for leverage, legacy, and the illusion of control. And while markets react and headlines swirl, it's workers, consumers, and families on both sides of the border who will carry the cost. What do you think? Is Canada's pivot to LNG and global markets the right strategy, or should they focus on repairing relations with the US? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more analysis on global trade wars and their real-world impact.